Julius Caesar was born in 100 BCE into the Julii family, one of Rome's oldest patrician lineages. His ancestry traced back to Aeneas, the mythical Trojan prince, and even to the goddess Venus herself, at least according to family legend. On paper, this gave Caesar noble blood and divine connections. But in reality, his family had little wealth or political influence left. The Julii name carried prestige, but not power. Caesar's childhood was spent in a modest house in the Subura district of Rome, a bustling neighborhood filled with noise, markets, and ambition. From the beginning, Caesar's life was shaped by contradiction: noble heritage, but limited means; old family honor, but little real influence. This tension drove his ambition. He would not be content to simply survive in Rome's turbulent politics. He wanted to rise above it. Caesar's birth marked the arrival of a man who would embody Rome itself, noble yet ruthless, humble yet destined for greatness, mortal yet striving for immortality.
As a young man, Julius Caesar's life was already filled with danger and ambition. When he was just in his 20s, fate placed him in one of the most dramatic episodes of his early career. He was captured by Cilician pirates in the Mediterranean. The pirates demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Caesar, insulted by the low estimate of his worth, insisted they demand 50 instead. Even as a prisoner, he carried himself with arrogance and confidence. He joked with his captors, recited poetry, and promised that once freed, he would return to punish them. The pirates laughed, but Caesar was deadly serious. After his ransom was paid, Caesar raised a small fleet, hunted the pirates down, captured them, and had them all executed, just as he had promised. This episode revealed two sides of Caesar that would define his entire life: his unshakable confidence and his ruthless follow-through. From his youth, he was already showing Rome that he was not an ordinary man, but someone destined to command respect and fear.
After surviving pirates and early struggles, Julius Caesar turned his focus to politics, the true battlefield of Rome. He began his career as a young lawyer, known for his sharp tongue, dramatic speeches, and fearlessness in the courts. Even then, Caesar was a master of words, persuasive, theatrical, and unafraid to challenge powerful figures. He quickly rose through Rome's political ladder, the cursus honorum, holding positions that gave him both visibility and influence. Unlike many nobles, Caesar aligned himself with the populares, the political faction that championed the common people against the aristocratic elite. This move made him immensely popular with the masses, but dangerous to the Senate's ruling class. He won offices, forged alliances, and used debt to finance grand public spectacles that captured the loyalty of Rome's citizens. Caesar's strategy was simple: win the people, and power would follow. By his early 30s, Caesar had already become one of the most talked-about men in Rome: charming, ambitious, and unstoppable. He wasn't just climbing the political ladder, he was reinventing it, reshaping Roman politics to serve his own destiny.
In 58 BCE, Julius Caesar was given command of Roman legions in Gaul, modern-day France and Belgium. What began as a governorship quickly became a stage for his unmatched military genius. For nearly a decade, Caesar waged the Gallic Wars, facing tribes that vastly outnumbered his forces. Yet time after time, he turned the odds in his favor. He built bridges across mighty rivers in days, launched daring winter campaigns when enemies thought the season would protect them, and used speed, engineering, and surprise as his greatest weapons. His victories were not just military, they were political. Every triumph in Gaul brought him glory back in Rome, where reports of his conquests stirred admiration among the people and fear among his rivals in the Senate. By the time Gaul was fully subdued, Caesar had expanded Rome's territory to the Atlantic, enslaved or allied entire nations, and secured immense wealth. He had also forged the loyalty of his legions, soldiers who would follow him anywhere. The conquest of Gaul made Caesar more than a politician. It made him a living legend, a commander whose name carried the weight of Rome itself.
The Gallic Wars were the crucible that transformed Julius Caesar from a rising politician into Rome's most feared general. For 8 relentless years, he battled the powerful tribes of Gaul, and in doing so, displayed both his brilliance and his brutality. Caesar's strategy was unmatched. He built bridges across the Rhine to strike fear into the Germanic tribes, launched lightning-fast raids to crush rebellions before they spread, and used siege warfare with terrifying precision, none more famous than at Alesia, where he encircled the Gallic leader Vercingetorix with double walls, trapping both the enemy and the reinforcements that tried to save them. But Caesar's conquest came at a terrible cost. Entire tribes were slaughtered or enslaved, villages burned, and populations displaced. His campaigns were not only military victories, but also acts of ruthless dominance designed to break resistance forever. Through his own writings, the commentaries on the Gallic War, Caesar crafted his image as Rome's savior and supreme commander, winning the hearts of the people even as his enemies in the Senate grew fearful of his rising power. The Gallic Wars gave Caesar wealth, fame, and an army utterly devoted to him, tools that would soon turn him against Rome itself.
In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar stood at the banks of the Rubicon River, the small but fateful border between his province and Italy. Roman law was clear. No general could bring his army across that boundary. To do so was treason, a declaration of war against the Senate and Rome itself. But Caesar had a choice: surrender his command, face trial, and see his enemies destroy him, or march forward and seize destiny. With his legions at his back, he uttered the legendary words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he did more than defy the Senate. He lit the fuse of a civil war that would tear Rome apart. Cities opened their gates to him, allies rallied to his cause, and even his enemies felt the pull of his charisma and power. It was the point of no return. Caesar had chosen to gamble everything: his life, his honor, and the fate of the Republic. And in that moment, Julius Caesar ceased to be just a general. He became a revolutionary force, reshaping history with every step of his march on Rome.
The crossing of the Rubicon unleashed a storm, the Roman Civil War, a clash not just of armies, but of visions for Rome's future. On one side stood Julius Caesar, champion of the populares and adored by his legions. On the other, Pompey the Great, once Caesar's ally in the First Triumvirate, now his bitter rival backed by the Senate and the Optimates. Pompey was no ordinary opponent. He had conquered lands across the Mediterranean and was hailed as one of Rome's greatest generals. Yet Caesar moved with a speed and boldness Pompey could not match. While Pompey withdrew to Greece to gather strength, Caesar secured Italy in a matter of weeks, then struck Spain with lightning campaigns that forced Pompey's allies into submission. The decisive showdown came at Pharsalus in 48 BCE. Caesar's forces, outnumbered nearly 2-to-1, fought with discipline and ferocity. Against all expectations, Caesar crushed Pompey's army. Pompey fled to Egypt, only to be betrayed and murdered upon arrival. With Pompey gone, Caesar stood unrivaled. But the war was not just about defeating rivals, it was about reshaping Rome itself. The Republic, once ruled by Senate tradition, was now in the hands of a single man whose ambition knew no bounds.
With his enemies crushed and Pompey dead, Julius Caesar returned to Rome not just as a victor, but as a master of the Republic. The Senate, powerless to resist him, named him Dictator for life, a title that made him the most powerful man Rome had ever seen. As dictator, Caesar launched sweeping reforms. He expanded the Senate, granting seats to loyal supporters and provincial leaders, weakening the old aristocracy's grip. He reformed the calendar, creating the Julian Calendar, which became the basis of the one we still use today. He canceled debts, improved infrastructure, founded colonies for veterans, and extended citizenship to many beyond Italy, weaving Rome's empire tighter together. But absolute power breeds suspicion. Caesar's growing dominance alarmed the Senate's traditionalists, who saw him not as a reformer, but as a king in all but name, something Romans despised. His image appeared on coins, he wore the purple robe of royalty, and he accepted honors that suggested divine status. To his supporters, he was Rome's savior. To his enemies, he was a tyrant, dismantling the Republic. Caesar's rule was a paradox. Brilliant reformer, ambitious visionary, but dangerously close to monarchy. And in Rome, ambition this great could only end in blood.
Behind the battlefield victories and political triumphs, Julius Caesar's personal life was just as dramatic as his public one. He married multiple times, each union serving both affection and political ambition. His first wife, Cornelia, gave him his beloved daughter Julia. Later marriages to Pompeia and Calpurnia strengthened his alliances within Rome's elite. But Caesar was equally infamous for his romantic affairs. His charm, wit, and power made him irresistible in Roman society, where gossip about his lovers was constant. He was rumored to have affairs with noblewomen, even whispers of dalliances that scandalized the Senate. The most famous, of course, was his relationship with Cleopatra VII of Egypt. After Pompey's death, Caesar became entangled in Egypt's royal struggle, siding with Cleopatra. Their partnership was as much political as it was personal. Cleopatra bore him a son, Caesarion, and together they envisioned a fusion of Roman and Egyptian power. For Caesar's enemies, these relationships were fuel for their hatred. They accused him of being ruled by passion, of wanting to be king, even of dreaming of founding a dynasty with Cleopatra. But for Caesar, his personal life was always intertwined with politics. Each affair, each marriage, each scandal, another step in the story of his power.
Julius Caesar was not only a conqueror on the battlefield, he was a revolutionary in Rome itself. Once in power, he transformed the Republic with reforms that touched nearly every aspect of Roman life. He expanded citizenship, granting it to people in the provinces who had long lived under Rome without full rights. By doing so, he tied distant lands closer to the empire and secured new loyalty. He also restructured the Senate, raising its numbers and filling it with allies, former soldiers, and provincial leaders. This weakened the aristocracy, but made the Senate more diverse, though critics saw it as Caesar packing the house with loyalists. Economically, Caesar reduced debt, distributed land to veterans and the poor, and launched massive building projects that reshaped the city. His colonies spread Roman culture across the Mediterranean. And his most lasting contribution? The creation of the Julian Calendar, a system so effective that it still underpins the one we use today. But these reforms were not without controversy. To many, they looked less like improvements and more like steps toward monarchy. Caesar was centralizing power, making himself indispensable. The Republic was shifting, and with it, the future of Rome itself.
When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt after chasing Pompey, he stepped into a royal drama, a deadly rivalry between Cleopatra VII and her brother for the throne. Cleopatra, brilliant and ambitious, saw in Caesar not just an ally, but a partner who could secure her power. Their first meeting was legendary. Cleopatra is said to have had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence, rolled up in the carpet, a daring act that revealed her courage and charm. Caesar was captivated. Soon, they became lovers, and their union was more than passion. It was a political alliance that reshaped the ancient world. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra regained her throne, and together they envisioned a powerful East-West partnership. Their son, Caesarion, symbolized that dream, a blending of Rome's might with Egypt's ancient legacy. But in Rome, the affair sparked outrage. Senators whispered that Caesar planned to make himself king, with Cleopatra as queen. The relationship blurred the line between politics and personal desire, feeding both admiration and suspicion. Though their time together was brief, the bond between Caesar and Cleopatra left a lasting legacy. It tied Rome and Egypt in a union of love, ambition, and empire, one that would echo through history long after both their deaths.
Among Julius Caesar's many reforms, one stands above the rest for its lasting impact. He reshaped time itself. By Caesar's day, Rome's calendar had become a mess, riddled with political manipulation and drifting hopelessly out of sync with the seasons. Festivals fell in the wrong months, harvests didn't match the calendar, and priests exploited the chaos for political advantage. Caesar, ever the reformer, turned to the best minds of the era, including the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes, to design a new system. In 46 BCE, he introduced the Julian Calendar, based on the solar year rather than the old lunar system. The year now had 365 days, with an extra day added every 4 years, the leap year. This reform wasn't just about order, it was about control and legacy. By bringing time itself under his authority, Caesar placed his mark on daily life in a way no ruler had before. Every harvest, every festival, every Roman birthday would follow Caesar's calendar. The Julian calendar proved so effective that it remained in use for more than 1,600 years, with only slight adjustments to become the modern Gregorian calendar. In this way, Caesar didn't just conquer Gaul or reform Rome, he conquered time itself, ensuring that his influence would endure for millennia.
Julius Caesar understood something few before him had mastered: the power of image. He knew that victories were not enough. Perception was everything. Through coins, statues, and ceremonies, he crafted a persona larger than life, blurring the line between man and God. For the first time in Roman history, Caesar's face appeared on coins during his lifetime, a shocking break from tradition. He wore the laurel crown of triumph, a symbol not only of victory, but of eternal honor. His triumphal parades in Rome were grand spectacles designed to dazzle the masses and remind them of his unmatched conquests. Caesar encouraged honors that bordered on divine worship. Temples were dedicated to his clementala, mercy. Priests were appointed in his name, and statues portrayed him alongside the gods. To the common people, he was Rome's savior, a man touched by the divine. To the Senate's old guard, it was alarming, a clear sign that Caesar sought not just power,
but immortality through deification. This careful blend of propaganda and aura created the cult of Caesar, a force that outlived him. After his assassination, the people would look up to the sky, see a comet blaze across the heavens, and believe it was the soul of Caesar ascending to the gods. In death, the cult was complete. Caesar was no longer just a man, but a god in the hearts of many Romans.
For all his popularity among the people and soldiers, Julius Caesar's rise terrified Rome's old elite. The Senate, once the Republic's heart of power, now lived in the shadow of a single man who seemed unstoppable. Every reform, every honor, every display of authority fed their fear that Caesar aimed to make himself king, a title Romans despised since the days of their earliest kings. Whispers turned into plots. Senators grumbled that Caesar had too much power, that he had weakened their influence by expanding the Senate with loyalists, that he appeared in royal dress, accepted divine honors, and ruled as though the Republic were already gone. Some of his closest allies began to turn against him. Men like Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, respected figures of the aristocracy, came to believe that assassinating Caesar was the only way to save Rome. The tension grew unbearable. On one side, Caesar's supporters pushed for more honors, even suggesting he be crowned king. On the other, conspirators sharpened their daggers in secret meetings, convinced that if Caesar lived much longer, the Republic would die. By early 44 BCE, the Senate was a chamber filled with paranoia, resentment, and betrayal. The question was no longer if Caesar would be struck down, but when.
In early 44 BCE, Julius Caesar's fate seemed written in the stars. The soothsayers warned him, "Beware the Ides of March." Friends and allies whispered concerns, omens appeared, and even his wife Calpurnia begged him to stay home. But Caesar, confident and ambitious, brushed aside these warnings. The Ides of March, March 15th, arrived. Caesar entered the Senate at the theater of Pompeii, fully aware that tension hung in the air. Yet his pride, his sense of destiny, and his belief in his own invincibility carried him forward. Conspirators, led by Brutus, Cassius, and other senators, struck swiftly. Caesar was stabbed 23 times, betrayed by men he considered allies, including Brutus, whom he allegedly addressed with the words, "Et tu, Brutus, you too, Brutus." The murder shocked Rome. It was not just the death of a man, but a dramatic clash of ambition, loyalty, and destiny. Omens and warnings had gone unheeded, and in that fateful moment, the Republic was forever changed. Caesar's death became legend, a story of hubris, betrayal, and the fragile balance between power and fate.
On March 15, 44 BCE, Julius Caesar walked into the Senate, unaware that his fate had been sealed by men he trusted. The conspirators, including Brutus, Cassius, and dozens of senators, surrounded him under the guise of respect and friendship. The attack was swift and brutal. Caesar was stabbed 23 times, each blow a mixture of fear, vengeance, and political calculation. The ultimate betrayal came from Brutus, a man Caesar had considered like a son. Witnesses claimed that when Caesar saw Brutus among the attackers, he uttered the famous line, "Et tu, Brute?" a mixture of shock, sorrow, and resignation. The assassination was both personal and political. The conspirators believed they were saving the Roman Republic from tyranny, yet their actions unleashed chaos instead of stability. Caesar's death did not restore the old order. It fractured Rome, setting the stage for civil wars that would reshape the world. Even in death, Caesar's aura endured. His image, his reforms, and his legend lived on, proving that while men can kill a leader, they cannot easily kill an idea or a destiny.
Julius Caesar's assassination did not restore the Roman Republic as the conspirators had hoped. Instead, it plunged Rome into chaos. Senators celebrated briefly, thinking they had preserved liberty, but the power vacuum quickly spiraled into civil war. Rome's streets became battlegrounds of political factions. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal ally, seized control of the city, delivering his famous funeral oration that turned public opinion against the conspirators. Meanwhile, Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, began to assert his claim, gathering supporters and resources. The once mighty Senate struggled to maintain authority. Rival generals fought for influence, armies marched across Italy, and the dream of a restored republic seemed increasingly impossible. Caesar's death had not ended his influence. It had magnified it, turning him into a symbol of power, ambition, and destiny. Through the chaos, it became clear the republic was dying, and a new era of emperors and centralized authority was on the horizon. Caesar's legacy would shape Rome for centuries, even as the men who killed him paid the price for their betrayal.
After Julius Caesar's assassination, his legacy did not fade. It was carried forward by those who would fight to claim it. The two most prominent figures were Octavian, his adopted heir and grandnephew, and Mark Antony, his loyal ally and trusted general. Octavian was young but cunning, using Caesar's name and reputation to rally support and secure political legitimacy. Antony, commanding Caesar's legions, had the loyalty of the army and the ability to influence the masses. Together, they initially allied to punish the assassins of Caesar, forming the Second Triumvirate with Lepidus to consolidate power. Civil war erupted across Rome and its provinces. Brutus and Cassius, the lead conspirators, faced the combined might of Caesar's supporters and were ultimately defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. The Republic's old guard had been swept away, leaving Caesar's heirs as the new rulers of a transformed Rome. These conflicts set the stage for Octavian's rise as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, proving that Caesar's vision of centralized authority and enduring legacy would survive long after his death. Through war, alliances, and ambition, his heirs ensured that the world Julius Caesar conquered and reshaped would never return to the republic he once knew.
Julius Caesar's life, death, and legacy reshaped Rome forever. The Republic, once governed by a Senate and elected magistrates, was collapsing under the weight of civil war, ambition, and the concentration of power in the hands of a single man. After Caesar's assassination, the power struggles between his heirs and rivals accelerated the end of Republican rule. Octavian's eventual victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra at Actium in 31 BCE solidified the transition from republic to empire. Rome was no longer a city-state with shared governance. It became an empire ruled by emperors, beginning with Augustus, Caesar's adopted son. Caesar's reforms, military conquests, and political strategies laid the foundation for this transformation. His vision of centralized authority, loyalty from the legions, and political propaganda ensured that the empire would endure for centuries. In a sense, Caesar became both a bridge and a catalyst, the man whose ambition ended the Republic and created the Roman Empire. Rome had changed forever, a testament to the power, vision, and enduring influence of Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar's influence did not end with his assassination. It echoed across centuries. As a military commander, he demonstrated unmatched strategic brilliance, using speed, surprise, and innovation to conquer Gaul and defeat his rivals in civil war. His campaigns became a blueprint for leadership and warfare for generations to come. In politics, Caesar reshaped Rome. He expanded citizenship, reformed the Senate, implemented economic relief measures, and centralized authority in ways that stabilized the empire while simultaneously undermining the old republic. He understood that power required both public support and calculated ruthlessness. Caesar was also a master of personal charisma. He inspired loyalty among soldiers, manipulated public opinion through speeches and writings, and used propaganda to craft a godlike image. His leadership combined intellect, audacity, and a willingness to take risks that few could match. Ultimately, Caesar's legacy lies in his ability to fuse military genius, political reform, and personal ambition into a force that changed the course of history. He was the man who transformed Rome from a fragile republic into a powerhouse destined to dominate the ancient world.
Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Caesar's legendary declaration after his swift victory at Zela, capturing his bold, decisive nature. Alea jacta est, the die is cast, uttered when crossing the Rubicon, marking the moment he committed to civil war and destiny. Et tu, Brutus, you too, Brutus, his final words symbolizing betrayal, loyalty, and the tragedy of power. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. On courage and facing fate with boldness, reflecting Caesar's fearless leadership. Experience is the teacher of all things, a testament to learning from life, campaigns, and politics alike. I love the name of honor more than I fear death, revealing Caesar's ambition and the driving force behind his conquests. It is better to create than to learn. Creating is the essence of life. Demonstrating his visionary mind, always striving to shape history rather than follow it. No one is so brave that he is not disturbed by something unexpected, showing his awareness of human vulnerability even amidst great power. Men willingly believe what they wish, on perception, propaganda, and the manipulation of opinion, reflecting his political genius. As a rule, men worry more about what they can't see than about what they can, revealing his understanding of fear, strategy, and the psychology of leadership. These words capture the essence of Julius Caesar, bold, cunning, ambitious, and visionary. They reveal a man whose ideas and actions shaped the Roman world, and whose influence continues to resonate across history.